Blog Talk Radio.
This is another episode of Wake Up African People. This is the Truth Doctor with his hostess, Queen Shona. And tonight we are interviewing Herman and Iyaluua Ferguson. Yes, they are back, living icons. That was with Malcolm X. They did all the things they needed to do for us to have these so-called little bit of freedoms we have today. And they want to talk about the political prisoners that got locked up and put away for your freedoms, for everything that you have today that you think is worth something, but is not worth freedom. These people fought for you to have these things that you consider freedom today. Our political prisoners have been locked away like, locking away treasures. And we want them out. We want them out. We want them out. So I'm about to hand the mic over to his wife, Iyaluua Ferguson, and she's going to let you know the lowdown on the political prisoners.
Good evening, brother. Thank you. Yeah, we'll talk the lowdown on political prisoners. Let me start by making sure that everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say political prisoners. Back in the late 60s, well, really, if you talk about Marcus Garvey, you go all the way back. But at any rate, in the 60s and 70s and later in the 80s, young men and women were rounded up en masse. If they weren't killed, run out of the country, they were jailed. And these were, I call them our freedom fighters. These are people that were organizing in the black community, trying to educate and bring us together as a forcible weapon against the tyranny and the oppression that was our community always faces. These people now, many of them who have not been killed or who are not in exile like Pete O'Neill and Arthur Harris, but they're in prison, and they have been in prison, for some of them for 45 years. And we sit here, and so many of us don't even know of their existence, and yet they've been in prison longer than some of you all have been alive. So these are the brothers and sisters, the freedom fighters that I'm speaking about, and that we call political prisoners and prisoners of war. Because some of them, by the way, do not consider themselves political prisoners. They consider themselves prisoners of war because they know that there was a war being waged against us as a people, and they were actively fighting against the enemy in that war and captured, and so they are prisoners of war. So these are the people that I basically was going to speak about tonight.
Mm-hmm. Good evening, brothers and sisters, friends of political prisoners, supporters of political prisoners. My wife has such a keen grasp of the meaning of the words political prisoners and prisoners of war that there isn't much left. We will fill in the gaps and try to make it more plain to you who these political prisoners are, these freedom fighters, our freedom fighters. Some of them admitted and some who have fought back quietly, unassumedly, and have nonetheless have made it a living hell for our enemies. And they know who our enemy is. They know the enemy is the United States government. They know the enemy is white people. And they've done all they can to give us some means of survival and continuing to fight.
Let me talk about, because you come out of the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. So let me point to two. Of course, the most famous of all is, of course, Mumia Abu-Jamal. And Mumia is famous because Mumia had the death penalty. It isn't that he did anything more or was accused of anything more than Russell or Jaleel or the rest of them, but they did give him the death penalty. And we all fought very hard. Finally, after many, many years, we got Mumia off of death row. So he no longer faces the death penalty. But then, you tell me, brother, what is life without parole? If that's not a death penalty, I don't know what it is. And that's what Mumia faces now. But Mumia is in the Pennsylvania area, in prison upstate, and he has been incarcerated for some 31 years. 31 years. So let me talk also about another brother from the Philadelphia area, Russell Maroon Schultz. And I wonder how many people in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, know the name of Russell Maroon Schultz. This brother has been incarcerated for 41 years. He has escaped 3 times, but he's been captured, and then he stayed in solitary for some 30-some years. Russell, I guess, is accused of and convicted of having shot up the police station, I believe. But most of all, Russell is just a very committed black man, a very committed freedom fighter, whose daughter, Teresa, lives in Philadelphia, and she fights all the time for her father. She finally won a minor victory in that we got him out of solitary confinement, which he had been in for 30-some years. And now he's in another part of Pennsylvania, but in general population for the first time in all these years. So those are two that the Philadelphia people should know about, Mumia and Russell. I always say when I talk about him, if you want to define resistance, just say Russell, because that's what he does. That's what he did and does. Resist everything that the beast wants to throw at us.
Now, we have, tonight, we're going to try and give you more information than we did the last hour we were on about our political plight, of our freedom fighters, political prisoners, the length of time that they're serving collectively and jointly, and what the enemy, who is the enemy? We know the enemy is the United States of America. We know the enemy is the white man. My wife, Iyaluua Ferguson, has helped me to prepare a book called An Unlikely Warrior. It's a story of the evolution of a black nationalist revolutionary. How I went from being a nice guy to a kind of guy who felt that we owed so much to our heroes, the political prisoners and the freedom fighters, who are basically largely unknown to most of us. They have not been eulogized by our own people, certainly not, and by our enemy. When we talk about political prisoners, who are we talking about? We're talking about the men and women who in many instances picked up the gun and fought back and protected the black nation against the inroads of the American government and white people in general who hated and disliked us. Someone said just recently that that nobody came to this country invited. There were no, what was it?
Well, everybody's an immigrant except
right.
There are two sets of people that are not immigrants. Of course, the Native American who was born here, and black folks, because we didn't come in here as immigrants. We were dragged over here in slave ships. Everybody else, immigrants.
And when we came here, we met the Indian here, the red man. He was here. It was his land. And the American English white man took the land from him, killed his people and all of that, destroyed his culture. And then subsequent people were brought into this country who were immigrants. And they were made to work, to labor. They gave up their all their knowledge of themselves and their culture, and were made by slaves. We want to talk to some extent about those brothers and sisters who represented our people. And when I say they represented our people, these were the brothers and sisters who were brought from Africa, were stolen from Africa. Their language was stolen, their culture, and they were made into slaves. For 500 years, they worked the fields and did all of the kind of work that was required by white people to develop the United States of America. And we have to understand this, that these political prisoners who numbered in the thousands, they were the ones who were responsible for today's wealth of America, the territory and everything else, because they were the ones who fought back the white man, the United States government, and did all that they could to free themselves and to free other people who were enslaved by the white man.
But specifically, I want to talk about the brothers and sisters who remain in prison after these some 40-some years. They, and as I said before, most of you weren't even born when they were there. But these men went into prison at 18, 19, 20 years old. Now they're 60, 65. Sundiata is in his 70s. And their whole lives have been in prison. And what they brought to us that gives us the freedom to sit here and talk like we're talking now. The little whatever you call freedom today, these brothers and sisters are responsible for it. They raised so much hell. They kept their foot in the cracker's neck as much as they could. They fought back as much as they could. And so much time went into just trying to cut them down. And aside from picking them off or killing them or whatever, they had to release some of the freedoms that you think you observe today. They are responsible for our being here today. We owe them something, and we're not doing it. We just leave them and forget about it. Most of us don't even know who they are. Mm-hmm. We don't think about them, and they should be. They should be household words. Our children should be taught about them because they are the heroes of our so-called freedom. They are the heroes of whatever little prosperity we have. But we don't know about them. We don't know about Jaleel. Jaleel's been in prison for 40 years. He was 18 when he went in. His mind today is as sharp as it was then. We don't know about that.
How old is he now? Do you know about
60-something.
Yeah.
60.
When you talk about their having gone into prison at a very early age, many of them were teenagers and pre-teenagers, and now they are grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers. These are the people that we want to talk about tonight, to bring to you a little more understanding about the political prison, our freedom fighters, and to make their conditions, the sacrifices they have had to give up, their lifetime, and they've given up their lives to the freedom of our people. We want you to know a little about them so that when we leave here tonight, we will have experienced some of the problems, some of the sacrifices that they made as they defended our nation and our people from the white people who came here, took the land from the red man, and did all of the terrible things that they've done. And we want you to know something about these people.
Okay, let me tell you who is Sundiata Acoli. Brother, could you tell us, because I'm doing all the talking, and Herman is too. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us who Sundiata is?
He's a political prisoner. That's all I know.
Okay, well, let me read this. Sundiata Acoli, a mathematician, a computer analyst. He was born in 1937 in Texas. He graduated from Prairie View with a BS in mathematics, and for the next 13 years worked for various computer-oriented firms, mostly in the New York area. This is not, what they throw out there, we're all a bunch of thugs, right? All of the people running through the streets and fighting for our freedom, a bunch of thugs. This man actually worked for NASA for a period of time. Mathematician. Sundiata is now 70-some years old. Let me see. I can't figure out when he was born, but he was born in 37. So that makes him 77 years old. And he has been in prison for 40 years. He went down with Assata Shakur. Both of them were captured on the New Jersey Turnpike, and a gunfight ensued. Cops shooting all over the place, and some cop died or something. And that cop died from friendly fire. Assata was captured. Zaid, who was also there, was killed. And Sundiata escaped for a couple of days. They captured him down. Sundiata has been up for parole I don't know how many times. He ain't going nowhere. He's not going anywhere because they want, with all their might, they want Assata. And Assata Shakur, in case the audience doesn't know, is safely in Cuba. He managed to escape from prison and to go into exile in Cuba. And Sundiata, they're not letting Sundiata go because they can't get hold of Assata. That's the kind of people that they are.
Sister Iyaluua. Assata Shakur, a lot of people they know her now, but her name used to be Joanne Chesamad. I was a little boy when that happened. I'm from New Jersey, originally from New Jersey. And I want to ask you a question about a new political prisoner who they won't give no medical assistance or nothing, named Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown. And I want to just tell the people that if you can write, which I know most of y'all can write, you need to start writing letters to Georgia and to the governor of Georgia, asking for Imam Jamil Alameen to get some medical assistance because they won't give him medical assistance. He's a freedom fighter. He wrote the book Burn, Baby, Burn. Then he became Muslim, and I used to be on his detail. When he got the bullet removed from his groin, I was on the security detail in Georgia because I used to be part of the Muslim community down there that he was the imam of. And the brother right now, I be posting on my page about him. on the internet. He needs everybody to write letters to the governor with this, that you're disgusted that this brother cannot even get any medical attention in jail, and they never had no evidence that he shot a police. They said that the police shot the guy, and they had a blood trail. Imam Jamil Al-Amin never had a scratch on him. They were after him since the 60s. They shot him in the groin after the 60s because he went to Detroit, I believe, and his book was very popular, and they burned down a couple of cities. Burn, baby, burn. And, you know, I just want to shout out to him before the Fergusons finish. I want to shout out to everybody about Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Write your letters, get your pens writing, get your computer writing, get you some petitions, whatever you got to do. These freedom fighters need us. Whatever they can get extra while they're in jail, because they may not let these people out because they're scared of these type of brothers. And even though they own, just tell you how scared the white establishment is. These are old men, and they're still afraid of them.
Truly, truly.
We're going to bring sister in about maybe 5-10 minutes after y'all say what you're going to say. Queen Shona wants to ask you guys some questions. So
okay,
please
well,
go ahead.
I just want to say that Imam Jamil Al-Amin is now in Butner, North Carolina. We finally threw the letter writing and the pressure and the like because he was in serious physical medical condition. They finally were able to get him out of Florence, and he is now in North Carolina. And that's just happened within the last maybe 2 weeks, week or 2 weeks, I don't know, something like that. But that's where he is now. I have not seen him because I have a problem here at home, so we haven't been able to get to where he is. But that's where he is now. And speaking about, and I just want to talk a bit about the problem of parole for these brothers, getting these brothers out, your letter writers, your petitions. It's an endless thing. I've got to mention Jalil Muntakim. Jalil was just turned down for the 8th time by the parole board for parole. Jalil has no infractions on him for the past 15, 20 years. But every time he comes up for parole, he's turned down, and that what they say is the seriousness of the crime for which he was convicted. That crime don't change. If indeed he even was true, it don't change. So that's a nonsense. Jalil, 8 times, this is his 8th time, and he was turned down. And this business of parole is something that we as a people have to begin to address vigorously, because these brothers and sisters do not come home because they will not release them on parole, even when they do get parole. I'm talking about Veronica Bowers. Bowers reached his mandatory release date 10 years ago, and he was to be released. He was on his way out of the prison door. He was sitting outside.
He had finished his term.
Everything, right. An hour and a half to go before he could walk out those doors. And he was called back in and told that by the warden that they were told they could not release him. They had to keep him. And that fight for Geronta to come out has been going on. He's still in prison. Enjoyed 10 years after he reached his release date. So I can't say enough about how we have got to become really educated about what is going on with our brothers and sisters behind bars and in this whole criminal injustice system. It doesn't work for us. I don't want to hear about no laws or no nothing, because the laws, they don't apply to us. They make them up as they go along, and they are killing us, and we are sitting and taking it. And then while we're sitting and doing nothing, these brothers are getting older and older and older and are beginning to die off. I lost my good brother Bashir Hamid, I lost him in prison. Again, when he did get sick, that was the end of that. Story done. You ain't getting the kind of treatment you need to come out. Bashir died on the floor.
And he's just one of many.
One of many. I'm just mentioning because that was a personal thing with me. Teddy Jarhees, No Washington. Mm-hmm. We could go on. So, yes, brother, you said the sister wanted to ask me a question.
Yes. Before I bring Queen Shona on, I want to ask this one question myself. And I was following Abdullah Shakur, Tupac's
my
godfather. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to be out by now, wasn't he?
Abdullah, I'm told, is coming up next week for parole. Joan Gibbs, lawyer, was just here this weekend, and I think she said on August 12th he would be going before the parole board. Joan is optimistic, and my husband, Herman, is not in the best of health. But if Matulu is released and is released into New York, we're going to wrap up Herman.
It doesn't matter where he's released.
Wrap up Herman and we going there. We going there. It remains to be seen, but watch for that. Like I said, Joan says it's August 12th. Mm-hmm.
May I slide a question in here? Brother, may I just ask my wife a question, because she has a lot of valuable information that she wants to share, but unless someone specifically asks her, she may miss some of it. Number one, I want her conversation to you to tell you a little about the parole board, their kind of authority that they have over political prisoners, and if there's any way that the parole board people can be contacted. Is an organization that tells about the kind of terrible hold they have on our political prisoners and how they're able to keep them in prison long after their given time has expired. We have a number of prisoners who are being held illegally by the United States government, even though their terms have been served. So I'd like to know if there's any way that anybody can contact the political prisoners, not the political prisoners, I'm sorry, but we want you to contact the political prisoners. Yes.
Parole boards are a joke.
Yeah.
They're political hacks. They are a joke. They are appointed by the governor of the state, wherever they are. And I speak the one state I know well, New York State. They're appointed without any kind of consultation with community and the like.
Any real control.
They are just and they just go in. They already have the decision made before they meet. If they know that, for instance, they know they're meeting Herman Ferguson, and he was turned down. Herman went before parole board, and he was in there 15 minutes, and he was turned down goodbye. We went to court, and we got Bruce Wright, and that's how we got him out. But the parole boards are political hacks, and they are a joke. You want to talk about them, what you have to do is become a politically conscious people. You have to fight your governor, and you have to fight your state representatives. You have to keep the pressure on them. You have to let them know you want this parole board member out, because most of them are just cops or lawyers or former prosecutors, and you want some say in who is on that board. But it's a political thing, and we have to use our political might. We have to develop it, number one, and we have to use our political might to, in any way, affect the parole board. But at the present time, parole boards are a joke. They're just they're ridiculous, totally ridiculous. And it's not just political prisoners. I've been to meetings total with prisoners, period. Their families, and their families they're in tears. They don't know what to do. A man is in prison 15 years, good behavior and whatever, but for some reason the board says no, he ain't going out. And particularly if in New York State, if he comes from New York City, and they're just horrible people. They let out those people, I think, who they know will come back to them. They will go and do harm to the community, which is what they want, and they'll come back. But if we're serious about parole boards, then we have to develop a political might and attack the governors of the state and our state representatives and attack them with, this is what we want control of. We want input into that board.
But can we get any kind of input? Is there any kind of organization out here that political prisoners can reach out to exercise some kind of supervisory control or some sort of control over the board? Is there an organization of some kind?
No, we've done this.
What about
MXCM? They did a beautiful thing a number of years ago where they were really working for certain, I think something like 8 or 10 prisoners. And they really put together excellent material and whatever. But the answer is no. Even when Patterson was governor of New York State, they don't respond. There is no united front among black people that forces them to respond to us. And they did not. We did everything we could when Patterson was governor, including getting this white boy, Ramsey Clark, who was on our side. We got nobody out. Got no change in the parole board.
Well, isn't there any body of people here on the outside who can speak for political prisoners, give them some sort of representation?
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Ferguson, I plan on keeping the political prisoner thing going on my radio show, and I plan on trying to get a group together because most of these groups that's out here today are just, they're just dead. Black people have been totally pacified here in America, and they don't worry about our political prisoners. They don't worry about anything. They don't even worry about their children the way they used to. And I want to get Queen Shona in here because she's waiting diligently, and she wants to ask you guys a couple of questions. Queen Shona, the mic is yours.
Okay, wait a minute, Queen. I'm sure that Herman was trying to get me to say the Jericho Movement because that's the only real organization out here that I know of that is collectively trying to deal with the situation. So please let me give this address now, and then I'll give it at the end, www.thejerichomovement.com.
Yes, I knew you would
Connect with them and help them, join them, and that may begin to build up some force. I'll be quiet.
They have a lot of valuable information that they offer.
Greetings. Queen Shona is here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
The mic is
yours. First, I would like to say I am honored to be on this call with the Fergusons. You are definitely an icon to the black community, and we do appreciate you here tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Ferguson, I wanted to ask you a question. You pretty much partially answered it for me, but I wanted to know this. Who are our political fighters now that are standing up? And you pretty much kind of answered that, but I still want to know, how do you feel about any of the political freedom fighters that now they're living, that are out of the prison system, that have been in the prison system, but now are out, and are they interacting with these new political fighters? And what is your approach? How do you feel their approach for the black communities are working for us today?
I don't know. If I understand your question, you're asking about brothers and sisters who have been finally released from prison, and are they involved in the struggle? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, first, my answer is going to be a sad one. First of all, there aren't that many. The only one that I know that actually works, he works hard to free his comrades. Robert King of the, I don't know, they call themselves the New Orleans 3 or something like that, down Louisiana. Angola 3. It was Robert King, Herman Wallace, who did get released so that he could die outside of prison, and Albert Woodfox. And King works diligently for the release of the comrades he left behind. The only other person I know of is Eddie Conway, who very recently was released, and I haven't had any contact with him. I don't know what he's doing in the Baltimore and Maryland area, and I don't know if he has gotten into the political fight or not. I really and truthfully, Herman, of course, is a former political prisoner. He's been very, very active. There are a few, like Eddie Ellis, who just died. Eddie was a political prisoner, and he was in prison for some 25 years. Mm-hmm. And when he was released, he went to work, carrying out and spreading the message about the brothers, and he worked very hard on political prisoner issue. And like I said, Eddie just died. He died last week, I think it was. Mm-hmm. That's about it as far as, I know some brothers who perhaps were not political prisoners, but Raza Khan, for instance, who works very hard for all prisoners, right? That's about it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. My second question that I wanted to ask is this. I truly can believe that this is the limit is a very limited source of our black brothers and sisters that are politically fighting for us, because you don't see them today in this era of our time. And, I wanted to know if we did have the political fighters like we had the brothers in the past out now, what do you think they would face as far as the joke of the parole jokes? Because things are different today than they were then.
No, they're not. They're just as horrible today as they were then. Mm-hmm. And then some of these brothers who are out, brothers like Jaleel and like Matulu, they would be fighting just as hard. Mm-hmm. And trying to organize and trying to change the structures of our public school system, mm-hmm. and the like. Some of these brothers were just very, very, really committed to changing the situation. I know Matulu could never sit still and watch this mess, because it's no different. I mean, I was there 50 years ago, and I'm here now, and I think the schools are in worse condition than they were 50 years ago. At least that's what everybody tells me, and the like. And then I see down here in North Carolina, they're beginning to fight the same fight that we fought in New York around the school system. So, no, I some of them I know would be right in the midst of the struggle and trying to move us forward. And Jaleel, that's probably why Jaleel can't come home. When I met Jaleel, I met him in prison. And when I walked out of that prison with Herman, I said to him, they'll never let that brother out, because his mind is so sharp and he had so much to offer. And he was always thinking about us and the like. And that's Jaleel. And so they would, they wouldn't, they'd be there. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Can I get the proper spelling of Jaleel's first and last name, please?
Jaleel is Jalil. Muntaqim, Muntaqim.
Okay.
And if you want his address, or the address of any political prisoners, go to that website that I told you earlier, www.thejerichomovement.com. They have the whole list of political prisoners. Another one that I know personally, and just could not sit still and watch this, is Abdul Majid. But these are brothers. Abdul and Matulu were brothers that I worked with back in Jamaica, in New York, Jamaica, Queens, right? And these are active, and they're still active organizing brothers, even though they've been down all these many years.
But part of the authority of the political prisoners, not the political prisoners themselves, the ones that were in charge of the political prisoners, they could move those prisoners around to different prisons without any advance notice to the prisoner himself or to his family. So that if a prisoner, we give you an address of a prisoner and they send you back his letters, prisoner not known here, the prisoner may not be known at that prison, but they have the authority to move the prisoner from one prison to another without any notification to anybody.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that gives them a lot of authority that they exercise in a manner that they wish to exercise it.
It keeps them alienated in many ways and disconnected from their friends and supporters and family. You know, that's the whole purpose of it. I know that when Herman was in prison, and that they were moving that brother seemingly every other day, and they got sick of me too, because I was on the phone every other day. Where the hell is he? You know, they just come in the middle of the night and they move him out, and he's supposed to call me, and he doesn't. And if he didn't call me at that time, I called them, and then they didn't know, and so then I had to call all over the place, including state representatives, to find this man. But that's what they do. And those of us that are intimately involved with prisoners know that we have to just do that work. We have to just keep on their case and follow them. You can't let go. You can't let, you know, they have to know that there's someone out there that is watching them. Maybe we can't move them or whatever, we can watch them. And we can report on every movement that they make that is illegal, and we can push and holler. And that's what some of us do.
Yes. And I want to ask you another question, and I want to go touch back on Russell Schultz. Now, you mentioned that no one knows, and this is the first time I've heard of him, and I'm 44.
Horrible.
Yes. I'm 44 years old, and he has been through, I see some difficult things here. Can you give me the nature of what it was that he was fighting for?
Russell, and first of all, you're in Philadelphia, right?
No,
I'm not in Philadelphia.
No, I'm in North Carolina, where you are.
Oh, I see. Okay, no, that's okay. I thought you were in Philadelphia, and because that's where Russell's daughter is. And he's got a daughter in Philly, and he's got a daughter in New York. And Russell is great. I'm looking in the book. I have in my hand a book that's called Over 800 Years in Captivity. And it tells the story of various political prisoners. And it's a very informative book. And I think, if you'll hold on a minute.
Sure.
What's interesting about this book is that it gives us a total of 800 years that our political prisoners and former political prisoners are serving in America's prisons, and yet America claims that it does not have any political prisoners. But their records show that these prisoners have been behind the bars a total of 800 years. Some of them are great-grandfathers, great-grandmothers.
Okay. Now let me read you a little bit about Russell. Well, first of all, of course, he was born in Philly, and he's one of 12 children. He was originally locked up in 1972, and it says he's since spent over 25 years in 15 different state prisons. He was a founding member of the Black Unity Council, a Philadelphia group that eventually merged with the Philadelphia chapter of the Black Panther Party. He became a fugitive after a Philadelphia policeman was killed and another was wounded in a retaliatory attack on the Philadelphia police station. And that's what got him started.
Oh, okay.
And another interesting thing about Russell, there were two people, Russell and there was a co-defendant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they both eluded capture for a while, but then Russell was captured and was tried and convicted. The other brother wasn't. 30-some years later, the brother was picked up in Chicago and sitting in a bus stop because, the cops don't ever forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
This brother was picked up and brought back to Philadelphia to stand trial. And when he stood trial, he was acquitted. So Russell, the two of them really charged with the same thing. But Russell was tried at the height of, those days of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, 80s. This is the height of our movement, and the whole atmosphere was oppressive and against us. And Russell was convicted. His brother was not captured, did not go to trial then. When he was captured 30 years later and went to trial, then he was acquitted. There's a whole different kind of atmosphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I find that also very interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Truth Doctor, do you have any questions for the Fergusons here? I'm going to pass the mic over to you.
I would like to know, how do we get in contact with his daughter in Philadelphia? Because I'm in Philadelphia, and I would like to work with her.
I really don't know how you get in contact with Teresa. I don't know.
Get in touch with the organization.
What organization?
The organization that political prisoners have, or people who work.
Oh, yeah, the Jericho movement.
Yes, Jericho movement.
Right. Yeah.
They're very important people.
Mhm. Yeah, if you write them,
you can get in contact.
Well,
with her.
go to their website and get their information, and write them through to Teresa. But Teresa is very active in her father's defense and the like.
Yes.
And
does she?
Did
you get the address, brother?
Yeah. Does she be with Pam Africa?
Yes. She and Pam work together a lot.
I can find her then.
Okay.
I have Pam Africa phone number.
Okay, good. And the same I mentioned to you before, Basima. I don't know whether you know, but if you do, you could get her through Basima also. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know Sister Basima. And I want to ask about one other brother, if he's still alive, Romaine Fitzgerald.
I don't know him. He's in this book, and I don't know anything about him other than what I've read. I think he is still alive, though, because he's not listed back here with the ones who died. He's in the book, but I can't hold it.
Yeah, well, that's
Remain?
Yeah, well, not personally, but I do know that the website, which keeps in touch with political prisoners, their movements, so that the parole board cannot hide them so that you can't find them, because they will very easily move a brother after 2 or 3 years or more in one prison. They'll move him to an unnamed prison, and they will not give you any information about that prison. And but if you write this organization, they can give you that information.
Yeah, he would be on the website, and I'm looking at this page. He's in this book. He was sentenced to death, but in 1972, the Supreme Court declared the death penalty unconstitutional, and his sentence was commuted to life. And he has been eligible for parole since 1976. He has been served time 45 years, and he's in California. And like I said, anything else you want to know, you got to go up on the website and read it, because I can't read it all to you. But then he's in California. And you get his address from the Jericho website.
And this book, which is put out largely by the political prisoners themselves and the freedom fighters, lists not only the length of sentences that they were given, but also the nature of the crime that they're supposed to have committed, the number of years that it would cost to keep them incarcerated, and all kinds of other information, so that you know how much it is costing to keep a political prisoner, so-called, incarcerated. And it runs into thousands of dollars.
No, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Only other name I want to say on the air is Mondo Walanga. Mondo is in Nebraska, and he also has been down 43 years and on all kinds of trumped-up charges as usual. But I just want people to at least know Mondo's name. And if you go up again, you go up on the website, the Jericho website, and then they'll lead you to another website, and you can read all about him. But Mondo has been in the prison in Nebraska State Penitentiary, for 43 years.
That's a shame.
That my wife is referring to a book that's printed by the political prisoners themselves.
It's printed by the Alumni Association of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia.
Right. But it's also, they are responsible largely for getting all that information together. And my wife is given the name of this organization, but there's one particular name in this book of a political prisoner, a brother who's been in prison a number of years, a brother named Jojo Bowen.
I knew you were going to name.
Yes, brother Jojo Bowen, and his co-defendant. What is his co-defendant's name? I can't think of his name. Maybe my wife could quickly look up the name there.
I don't know.
But you need to get this book because it lists these political prisoners, some who admit that they are former warriors or were soldiers in the army of our nation, the Black Republic of New Africa. And Jojo Bowen and his co-defendant.
His co-defendant is Fred Muhammad Burton. Mm-hmm. And I always think of him as I shot the warden, but I didn't kill the deputy. But he did.
Yes.
Not only shot the warden, he killed the deputy, too.
Right. I think that song was responsible for it. That song about I killed the warden and the deputy warden, that song was sponsored by that incident and reached a nationwide fame. But I think it's important to, if you could look at Jojo and give us a brief excerpt of what he's supposed to have done, because he was a soldier in the Army. But
well, he was in the Black Liberation Army, and he's really just been fighting against them forever. Really. There's so much here. As a teen, he was a member of the North Phillies 30th and North Street gang. Then he was introduced into revolutionary politics, and he's just been fighting all the time. I ain't no angel. I'll do my time. All we want to be is to be recognized as what we are, human beings. That's JoJo Bowen. He never hesitated to literally fight the police, and that's one of the reasons why he's just there, because there's several instances mentioned here where there was a gunfight and a cop was dead, but not JoJo. And that went on until finally in 1973 he was called into the warden's office. Mm-hmm. And JoJo killed the warden, don't ask me. Let me tell you how to get this.
We don't know if he killed him or not, but he was accused.
Allegedly.
Yes, right. The warden and the deputy warden and his co-defendant. And this brother has taken an uncomplicated, dedicated position against fighting white people in the United States government.
Let me give you this address so you could write to them. Maybe you could get this book, which is really a very good book. It's NAABPP, Post Office Box 25943, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19128. And if you can get this book, I think you should.
You can get it from that address?
Well, I don't know. It's the only address that we have. So I would assume you could get it from this address. It says here, this information was compiled by members of the Political Prisoners Committee of the National Alumni Association of the Black Panther Party to make a contribution and to help support our political prisoners, send a check or money order to the address I just gave. Mm-hmm. But what I'm thinking is that you could probably write them and get a copy. They tell you how to get a copy of the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the important thing is to try and get the political prisoner and this organization together with each other so that they can have some kind of contact.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the question I want to ask you guys before we wrap it up for tonight, how was Johnny Cochran able to get Geronimo Pratt out, and there's no other lawyers that's out there to get any of these other brothers out?
Well, I don't know. That's just somebody. You just have to think. You have to guess or really know. If you read stories, you read Geronimo's book, Geronimo really puts the victory in the hand of Cochran's associate, whose name I cannot remember, but some white lawyer in Cochran's office, who seemingly did all the work. If you ask me, I say that this is O.J. Simpson's contribution to the movement. He didn't mean it, but O.J. made Johnny Cochran extremely popular and very knowledgeable. And right after the O.J. trial, Geronimo came up again, and by this time Cochran was a real celebrity, and I feel that the judge felt he had to rule in Cochran's favor. And I put that down to all that went down around the O.J. Simpson, but that's just my thinking. Probably it's that combination of that, all the publicity, all the eyes of the world were on Cochran, and therefore Geronimo at that time, and that always helps. And so because it was at that time that he got freed, because he had been up a few months. You were there, and he was not freed, But like after the O.J. Simpson trial, he came up again, and this time he got it.
And then he went before a congressional committee at one time, and Geronimo spoke, and a whole number of activists spoke on his behalf. And that was one of the reasons that he had so much publicity and was given so much support.
Well, speaking of Geronimo, let me say this, and I'm not going to say anymore. We've spoken about the brothers and sisters who were locked up, like the Move 9 and the like. We haven't spoken very much about the brothers and sisters who've been in exile for 40-some years. Arthur is one of them, and
Arthur who?
Arthur Harris.
Mm-hmm. My co-defendant.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
and the like. But I want to mention Pete O'Neill, and then his wife Charlotte. But Pete O'Neill is in Tanzania, and he has been in exile. I don't know how many years. And when you mentioned Geronimo, that made me think of it because Geronimo spent his last years in Tanzania with Pete O'Neill. But O'Neill is in exile in Tanzania. People are trying to work on a pardon for him so that he can come home. But he says no. He says, put your time in getting those brothers out of prison because he does very good work in Tanzania. They run a school. I think they now run an orphanage. Mm-hmm. He and his wife run an orphanage there.
And he's saying that instead of giving up so much time trying to get him back into the States, we should try and help these brothers who are free and moving about in the States, who are living in Africa and other countries. And they're doing a lot of good work. And he feels that's more important than getting him the freedom to move about in various countries around the world. And he feels that this organization can help in that extent.
Okay.
Elders, how about, has anybody thought about taking this to the World Court for Human Rights Abuses instead of political human rights abuses?
I think that's been done over the years. I do. I think that's been done over the years. I think Viola Plummer has been in Geneva and the like. You know, that's been done.
Matulu has been before some world courts.
Right.
So he's been represented in various courts, etc.
Mm-hmm. But the U.S. ignores that. Zimbabwe, for instance, did offer asylum to Matulu. But the U.S. ignores these things, and certainly ignores it in terms of white folks, in terms of black folks. Mm-hmm. The only one I know that was able to get out, was Sylvia Berardini. Mm-hmm. And, of course, she's a white girl, and Italy, where she's from, offered her asylum. And finally, they were able to convince the U.S. to let her go. And she was supposed to go to Italy and go into prison in Italy, but, of course, she didn't. She went to Italy.
But the strategy that the United States government uses, it refuses to admit that it has any political prisoners. They said, how can you fight to release political prisoners when we don't have any? The story does. You know, America has that kind of power, you know.
Okay.
So, elders, before we cut the show, because we're like about 5-10 minutes over, I don't want to keep y'all so much because I know the elders under the weather. What do you think that today's generation can do other than joining the Jericho movement? Because the Jericho movement is probably a good movement, but a lot of our people have phobias about joining movements that include white people.
You want to answer that?
Well, you know, I think that people have to learn to look at how people are motivated to join organizations, what the objectives of the organizations are, and the kind of work that they are attempting to do, and the meaningful work that they do. There have been a number of white organizations who they have done a lot of good work in freeing political prisoners, working to free political prisoners. So those people have to be identified, and their motives have to be looked at, and you have to look at their activities, and then get in touch with the organizations that they have joined and see what the organizations have to say about the kind of contributions that these people have made, and then judge them on the basis of their work.
Yeah, the only thing I had to say to that, this is not joining the organization white folks. Jericho movement is not run by any white folks. Both Herman and Safia. No, it's not. Herman, Safia Bukhari, and Jalil Muttaqin organized, well, they organized Jericho March and then the Jericho movement. And the Jericho movement initially underlying, that was not what they said. They said all political prisoners. But their main concern was that there be some place that fought for black political prisoners, because there ain't none. You have organizations that deal with the Puerto Rican political prisoners. They do excellent work. You have organizations that deals with Native Americans. Leonard Peltier sits outside their group, sort of sits outside of everything, and they only work on Native Americans. But there was none that focused on the bulk of the political prisoners who are African Americans, and the Jericho movement did that. Anytime you find Herman and you find Safia and you find me in an organization, you know that our concentration and that our focus and primary concern are brothers and sisters, our black brothers and sisters who fought and died for me and for my children and my grandchildren. So I don't know where this story comes from about the Jericho movement, white folks. Are there white folks? Paulette, yes. Paulette is white. But Jihad is not. Neither is Tekla. Neither is Asante. Neither is Kazi. And they are working diligently for political prisoners, and they will concentrate on all political, not when they ain't talking about the earth people or the environmental people. We ain't talking about them. We're talking about political prisoners, those people who represent national liberation movements. That is clearly defined. We fought that definition out I don't know how many times. It is those brothers and sisters who come out of national liberation movements. And that is what our black political prisoners do. And those are the people that Jericho works hardest. So that other story about whatever you just said is just simply, to me, not so. And the most valuable person that does all the work, gets all that information out about our prisoners, is Ann Lamb. And yes, Ann is white. But what Ann does is just that, get out information about our political prisoners immediately so that we can get to work on it and the like. And the Jericho movement needs all the people it can get, and people who are actively committed on holding rallies, holding forums, on writing letters. But, people like to fall back and they don't want to do things. They need to learn about Matula. They need to learn about Mondo. They need to learn about Pinelli, Hugo Pinelli. If we go on, about the hundreds of black men and women who are behind bars for political reasons, and most of our people have deserted them and come up with some lame excuse about they can't work with Jericho movement for whatever reason, I don't know. They need to.
Yes, I just had heard that before, but myself personally, if they're helping to get our political prisoners out, I don't care what they look like. I'm working with them. So
yes, and also you need to understand, and that is something that has been a part of the history of the movement. Those black political prisoners have not had anybody until Jericho movement, has not had a body, an organization that fights for them like I said, the Puerto Rican independentistas, they do an excellent job for the Puerto Ricans, and I don't in any way begrudge them. They do an excellent job. The Native Americans, they concentrate on Leonard Peltier and a few others that went down. But nobody has just zeroed in on the Matulus and the Jalil and the Abduls and, nobody until the Jericho movement. And that is the main focus of the Jericho movement. Those brothers and sisters, black brothers and sisters like you and me, who have been deserted. We need to come together as a people and fight for them.
True. So this is the truth, Doctor, and we're about to sign off, and I want to tell everybody that listens to this to go find out who the Jericho movement is and join them and hold hands in solidarity with the people who's trying to free our political prisoners. Get up off your black behinds and get out here in the streets. Use your computer, use your technology, use YouTube, use Facebook, use Instagram, use every outlet that you can to help free our political prisoners. Because if it was not for them, we would not have these little freedoms that we have today. The only reason that the whites gave us freedoms because these black people went out hard on them, and they knew that they could not defend America and fight wars, the Vietnam War and all the wars that was going on at that time. So they had to give up concessions. But right now, today, you can see that all these gains that we made in this country is being taken back from us. Black people are unemployed, as usual. They're the last to be hired and the first to be fired. We got to get up, stand up for your rights, like Bob Marley said. And I think these two elders, and I don't like to put their age out there, but these elders, they're old. They may not be with us for the next 25, 30 years. So somebody needs to pick up the torch. And the true doctor is going to be number one. I'm telling them that I'm going to be out here fighting for these political prisoners and using all my powers, all the people that follow me on Facebook, on my groups, on my radio show. If you think that you're black and you want to act black and you want to listen to all this black stuff that we talk on this radio show, let's get some black actions and do what you can do.
Good, brother. And as the battle cry of the Republic of New Africa rings out, free the land.
Yep.
Free the land. Free the land. And, brother, that's what you're doing. And you are to be complimented for what you're doing. All of the members of your listening audience and those new people who have not listened to your radio station before, who are drawn to what you are talking about because they believe in what you're talking about, they are to be complimented and to be encouraged to join this organization. And I want to thank you for letting us be on the program, and I appreciate this opportunity. My wife appreciates what she will want to speak for herself. But we appreciate what you've allowed us to do. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
It is a pleasure to even hear your voice. You rode with Malcolm X. You can't get no deeper than that. You rode with Malcolm X.
Yep, true.
You cannot get no deeper than that. You were in exile. All these things that these people take for granted today, you guys championed it. So we are blessed to have you on Wake Up African People. And this is the truth, Doctor. We're going to call it a night because our elders got to get their rest. And me and Queen Shona got to get our rest.
Thank you very much, brother.
Get back on the air and give y'all this provocative information about our people's freedom and uprise. We're going to rise
good night,
above. Good night.
Okay,
Good night.
thank you, brother. Good night to all.
Good night
all
to you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes,
to
sir.
all your listening audience, good night.
Good night. And I want to, before I say good night for the last final time, I want to mention you can contact Akbar Ralston on Facebook. Join my page. It's about 1,000 more slots open before I'll be over the 5,000 mark. I have a group called Wake Up African People. It's a plug up. It's a public page. You can get on the public page. And I have a group called Conscious Connect. Find Your Soulmate, where you can go in there and you can find you a brother or sister maybe you may be compatible with, and y'all can have a long, lovely life together like the Fergusons. They've been married for over 40 years. So,
all right, thank you so much.
Go there. Go to Jericho website, sign up, get politically active, and let's get our political prisoners out before they die. Because there's going to be some new political prisoners. And what comes around goes around. You may be a political prisoner one day. You never know. So let's get out there. Your child may be a political prisoner. So let's get out there. Your mother may be a political prisoner. So let's get out there. Someone you know and love may be a political prisoner. So get out there. And we are on the move. And I want to give a shout out to the UNIA, Division 121, which I belong to. And I want to give a shout out to my brother Patah at Brother Patah Radio. And I want to give a shout out to Legacy of a Nation, Brother Ramesses radio show. And go ahead and check out all these people, and they got information that will help you to lift yourself up.
Free the land.
Yes, free the land. Free the land.
Free the land.
Free the land. Free the people.
Free the land by any means necessary.
Necessary. The red, the black, and the green.
And the green.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.